When I was with Joshua, he had nothing to his name. All my friends tried to talk me out of it. With your qualities, you could easily find a rich man. Why suffer with him through all this hardship? Now that he's become a CEO favored by investors, people say the only reason I have him is because I got in early. Otherwise, with his status today, surrounded by beautiful, seductive women, why would it ever be my turn? Even my mom's changed her tune, telling me to lower my stance, learn to be more submissive, and not end up with nothing after all these years with him. I couldn't help asking, if he doesn't bring up marriage, am I supposed to beg him to propose? You're going to suffer with that kind of attitude. My mom scolded, clearly disappointed in me. Why can't you just go along with him a little? You planted this tree yourself, are you going to let someone else enjoy its shade? I didn't want to argue, I just felt wronged. Why is it that in this long relationship, I'm the one who waited, the one who got disappointed, and now the one who has to drop hints and push for action? Chapter 1. All right. Just don't fight with him when you get back. He didn't come see us off because of work, he didn't do it on purpose. My parents had traveled all the way to visit me. I had planned to show off some picture-perfect romance to set their minds at ease. But aside from picking them up from the airport on the first day, my boyfriend was basically MIA, caught up in his so-called important work. Today's farewell dinner, President Han finally graced us with his presence. But then he got a call and left before half the dishes were even served. Even so, my mom still tried to comfort me, afraid I'd start a fight with him. Just thinking about how they booked their hotel themselves so they wouldn't trouble me at all made me feel deeply sorry. At the security checkpoint, watching their stooped backs as they shuffled in with the crowd, my eyes welled up. Only heaven knows how I had the heart 5 years ago to leave them behind and follow Joshua Han to this faraway place. Chapter 2. That night, Joshua was dropped off by his new secretary. She struggled to prop up his drunken body at the doorway. Ma'am, please step aside. I'll help President Han to the couch. Since I'd stepped down from my position at the company, I hadn't been keeping up with personnel changes. No one had told me he had a new secretary. And such a young girl at that. Being the president's secretary is essentially a senior executive role. I remember Joshua's previous secretary, a returning overseas professional with 5 years of experience. She was skilled, polished, and never once let him get so drunk he had to be dragged home. Please don't blame him, it's all my fault. I can't hold my liquor. And President Han drank for my sake. Virginia looked genuinely sincere as she explained. I nearly laughed. The boss drinks to protect his secretary, and the secretary turns around to speak up for him. This mutual care could be straight out of a workplace romance novel. If only the man in question weren't my boyfriend. Still, I wasn't about to take it out on a young girl. I simply nodded, politely thanked her, and saw her to the door. But Virginia didn't leave. She kept staring at Joshua lying there groaning on the couch, looking very concerned. Something else? President Han must be feeling sick from all that drinking. Could you make him some warm honey water? It helps settle the stomach. The look of concern in her eyes made it seem like I was the one being negligent. I replied casually, "We don't have any." "Oh, yes you do," Virginia said, as if she lived here. Top shelf of the kitchen cabinet. Second section, there's a big jar in there. I smiled. You've been here before? Chapter 3. If it were me from 7 years ago, I probably would have splashed cold water on Joshua's face to wake him up, and forced him to explain every single word of what happened. But now, I simply told Virginia to leave in a calm voice, helped Joshua take off his suit jacket, and guided him to bed, while wiping his face with a warm towel. An untimely thought crossed my mind. If it were the Joshua from 7 years ago, he would never have let me end up in such an awkward, humiliating situation. Back then, after I agreed to be with him, he was so overjoyed that he'd suddenly start laughing in his sleep. He'd call my name over and over like a fool, Lily. Lily. One time I impulsively checked his phone, then joked in mock complaint. Wasn't there a saying that no one survives checking their boyfriend's phone? Why is there nothing suspicious at all? He looked genuinely wronged. What did you expect to find? I don't even have an ex. My first love is you. And no flings either. My profile pic is literally you. His phone back then was filled with dates about me, my birthday, my period, our 100-day anniversary of meeting, our 100-day anniversary of dating. It felt like every single day spent with me was worth celebrating. Now, the only glimpse I get of that past love is when he, drunk, instinctively burrows into the crook of my neck and mumbles for me to pat his back, intimate and dependent in a way that almost echoes what we used to have. Chapter 4. Back in his crisp suit, President Han didn't lift his eyes from the iPad once during the entire breakfast, as if everything happening online mattered more than the living, breathing person sitting across from him. The hangover soup I got up early to make sat untouched beside his hand, slowly going cold, staring at his composed, indifferent face. I suddenly felt an urge to ask, "Would you prefer some honey water instead?" Virginia told me about last night. He finally looked up at me, his tone calm and matter-of-fact. "She only took me home because I had too much to drink at a previous business dinner. Don't overthink it." His voice was so casual and confident, as if I was the one being unreasonable if I dared to push the issue further. I ladled porridge into my bowl, spoon by spoon, but didn't feel like eating. "If your secretary can't handle alcohol, why do you keep bringing her to drinking parties? She's just a young girl. What kind of drinks would she be expected to handle?" The way he defended her was far too obvious. I gave a bitter little smile. I wondered if he even remembered that I, too, was once just a young girl when I helped him win over clients. That ulcer he gave me from all that alcohol still hasn't fully healed. I still can't eat anything spicy. All the things I used to love, I had to give up one by one. He frowned slightly, then came over and gave me a quick kiss. "Be good. Don't let your mind run wild. I've got a business trip next week, from the 7th to the 9th. Can you help me pack?" The 7th to the 9th? I looked up at him, almost pathetically hoping he'd remember that one of those days is my birthday. But he just glanced at his watch and said, "I'm heading to the office." Chapter 5. Joshua didn't have much to pack. A medium-sized suitcase still had plenty of room. I stared at that empty space, hesitating. Should I stuff some of my own clothes in and go with him? If he happened to remember my birthday when the day came, I really didn't want to hear happy birthday through a phone screen. Just then, Joshua, who had been lounging on the couch playing on his phone, suddenly stood up, kicked open the footlocker, took out the first aid box, and tossed a packet of pills into that empty section of his suitcase. I glanced over and saw it was motion sickness medicine. "Why are you bringing that? You don't get airsick." "It's for Virginia." She said she didn't have time to prepare any. There were so many things wrong with that sentence. I didn't even know where to start. I felt a rush of blood to my head. To be fair, from a business perspective, Joshua couldn't miss the 10-year anniversary celebration for one of the company's biggest clients. But what exactly was someone like Virginia, with no relevant background, going there for? Was she going to win clients? Gather intel from the competition with some polite small talk? "She needs exposure," he explained, "so she can learn to handle things on her own in the future." As if there aren't thousands of resumes flooding in from people dying to get into the company, and countless employees straining their necks to climb the ladder. Why her? Why does President Han himself have to mentor her personally from blank slate to independent player? I took a deep breath, forcing down the rising frustration in my chest. "Why don't I go with you instead? There'll be a lot of networking at the event, too much for a young girl to handle. You're not in good health. You should just stay home and rest. Be good. Wait for me at home." All the words coming out of his mouth sounded like he was thinking of me, but his eyes wouldn't even linger on me for a second. Before I could respond, he had already lowered his head to look at his phone. His expression was relaxed, even smiling. I didn't know when he became so adept at being physically present next to me, yet emotionally and mentally miles away, so at ease getting his joy entirely from someone else. As if I no longer existed. Chapter 6. On my birthday, I sat at home the entire day, staring into space. My phone buzzed now and then. There were WeChat messages from my parents and friends, loyalty program promos offering double points, sales associates telling me they'd prepared little gifts. Even 2 longtime clients called to chat briefly. Everyone remembered, except Joshua. I waited until dusk fell and the streetlights came on. Waited until the day ended like any other, with nothing special at all. The final call before midnight came from one of the clients attending the anniversary celebration. "Lily, happy birthday." Jack's deep, magnetic voice came through the phone, laced with subtle disappointment. "Why didn't you come this time? I've been looking forward to seeing you. I even wrote your invitation by hand. I never received any invitation. But in that instant, I understood. Joshua must have intercepted it, because it was specially written. Because it was handwritten. Jack had pursued me once. No wonder Joshua refused. No matter what. To let me go with him on this business trip. But that was all in the past. I couldn't help laughing bitterly. I had no choice but to cover for Joshua. Thank you for the kind gesture, President. Someone needed to stay back to handle things at the office. My apologies. It's my fault. I scheduled the event for this day thinking it'd be a good time to get everyone together. I didn't expect you wouldn't come, and now Joshua's missing your birthday too. It's all right. I don't mind. I was just about to politely end the call when I heard a low chuckle on the other end. Well then, if I told you that his secretary's been in his hotel room for almost an hour and still hasn't come out, you still wouldn't mind? Chapter 7. I've never been the type to check up on my boyfriend. Joshua used to report everything to me voluntarily, where he was going, what he was doing. I never had to ask. Besides, I always thought women who barged into hotels to catch their cheating men were too pitiful. If a man has already gone that far, what's left to fight for? But now that it was happening to me, my first instinct was still to hope it was all just a misunderstanding. But when Joshua's phone was picked up, the voice on the other end was Virginia's. Put Joshua on the phone. I tried to keep my voice calm and steady. Virginia sounded all innocent, but it was clearly calculated. President Han is already asleep. Then wake him up. I don't dare. He's sleeping so soundly, like a little kid. He's even holding my hand and won't let go. Her trembling voice painted her as some helpless victim. What exactly are you planning to do? I dropped the facade of civility. You climbing into his bed, or just keeping him company through the night? I don't know. He's really strong. Then here's a suggestion. Cut off your hand. My patience snapped. I said coldly, Virginia, this is my final warning. Right now, immediately, get out of his room, or the only thing you'll be losing won't just be this job. Chapter 8. The next day, Joshua finally called. Not because he remembered my birthday. Not to apologize for the woman who had spent the night in his hotel room. No, he called to confront me for notifying HR that morning to fire Virginia. Why are you being petty with a young girl? He said dismissively, painting me as the unreasonable one. I laughed bitterly. So in your mind, I was wrong to interrupt your little one-on-one night together? Should I have just let you enjoy it? What nonsense are you even spouting? If I really did anything with her, you think I'd let you find out? Stop being paranoid. Oh, now you're living comfortably, firing people on a whim. Ever think she might not be able to pay her rent next month without this job? Do you know she cried all morning after HR called? She was terrified. Lily, you weren't like this before. Every word from Joshua felt like a knife to the chest. I had to breathe deeply just to steady myself before I could speak. Joshua, I offered to go with you. You refused. You insisted on bringing along a young girl who serves zero purpose. Professionally, how do you expect me to believe nothing's going on between you two? And what about you? Joshua snapped, cutting in sharply. What were you going for? Huh? Meeting your ex-lover? My breath caught. I could barely stay standing. Maybe he realized he'd gone too far, because on the other end, there was only silence, just the sound of both our restrained breathing. Before Joshua could say another word, I hung up. I never knew the contract I fought so hard to win back then, the one that kept our company afloat in its darkest days, was something he found so disgraceful. In the early years of the company, we were bleeding out because of poor strategy. That deal with Jack was our last hope. We fought tooth and nail for it. The price kept getting slashed. But Jack was never satisfied. In the end, he said I should accompany him to survey the northern market. 3 days and 2 nights. When I came back, he signed. Joshua never asked what happened on that trip. I thought there was no need to explain. I thought I couldn't have wronged him. It wasn't until now that I realized maybe Joshua had never truly believed in my innocence. Maybe he convinced himself he was being generous, tolerant, letting it go all these years. I remembered that night in the northern city. Jack joked. From what I know of Joshua, once you go back, it won't matter whether anything happened between us. In his eyes, it already did. And I had replied, full of certainty. No, I believe in him, and he believes in me. What a slap in the face that turned out to be. Chapter 9. I turned off my phone and didn't want to stay home any longer. This was the third apartment we'd moved into since coming to the city. By Joshua's current standards, it was relatively modest. Over the years, we'd been busy building the business. He never brought up marriage, and neither of us had the energy to move to a bigger place. But still, it was a home. After we moved in, I spent time decorating, arranging flowers and cozy furnishings, making it feel warm and comfortable. But at some point, that home became increasingly empty most of the time. I was the only one in it. It felt like there was a hole somewhere, leaking wind, the cold creeping in little by little. Of all the hurtful things Joshua said to me, what cut deepest wasn't his lack of trust, or how he defended Virginia. It was that simple sentence, "You've changed. Like everything that's gone wrong now is somehow my fault." Because I changed. But I wasn't always like this. I used to be innocent, romantic, naive. It was for him that I became tougher, stricter, more strategic and worldly. In the company, he played the good guy, so I had to be the bad one. If something couldn't be handled by him directly, I stepped in and got my hands dirty. Someone like Jack, who was blatantly trying to get something from me back in the day. I wouldn't have even spared him a glance. But at that time, he was holding the company's lifeline in his hands. If I didn't win him over, the company would have collapsed on the spot. I know I never once wronged Joshua, not in any step I took. So why is it that after everything, he turns around and tells me I'm no longer the person he once loved? He squeezed the innocence out of me, then turned to find a version of me that had never been opened. How could he be so cruel? Chapter 10. I took the earliest high-speed train back to my university. I walked across the field where we once kissed, stood on the rooftop where we'd watched the wind blow, traced the track where we used to hold hands. I remembered his dreams when he was young, so naive and wild, but I had truly, wholeheartedly believed he would achieve them. Later, I gave up everything to walk with him step by step toward those dreams. And yet, somewhere along the way, I lost the version of him from back then. It was 2 days before I returned. As I typed in the door code at our apartment, the door suddenly opened from the inside. Joshua rushed out and hugged me tightly. "Where did you go? Your phone was off. I've been looking for you all day." I could feel his worry. His chest was heaving against mine, and his arms wrapped around me with desperation. But I had no strength to hug him back or to push him away. Joshua must have sensed my indifference. He let go and muttered, "I'm sorry." I didn't know what he was apologizing for. For the cruel words? For forgetting my birthday? Or something else entirely? I didn't care anymore. "It's fine," I replied, and gently pried his arms off me, walking straight into the room, trying to make peace. Joshua had ordered a belated birthday cake. I gave him that much, ate 2 bites out of politeness. He seemed surprised that I was being so cooperative, stunned for a moment, then went on. "Virginia already resigned. I didn't think things through before. That's why you misunderstood. But nothing happened between us. You know I wouldn't lie to you." Okay. I wanted to say it didn't matter, that it could have been anyone, because, honestly, I no longer cared. But I didn't want to keep going in circles about this. It wasn't worth it. "Anything else?" Joshua froze, caught off guard, probably because the remorse and apologies he'd carefully prepared landed like punches into a pillow. I accepted it calmly, ended the topic right there. He didn't get a chance to say any of the other things he might have planned. Nothing. He finally managed to squeeze out. Chapter 11. During that time, Joshua was unusually considerate. It was as if his workload had suddenly vanished. He even had time to come home for dinner after work. At the table, he no longer buried his face in his phone. He'd actually make conversation, try to talk to me. One evening, I was updating my resume and didn't even notice he had come home. I had no idea how long he'd been standing behind me, until he finally spoke. "You're looking for a job?" "Yes," I said, closing my laptop and getting up to make dinner. But he tugged at the hem of my shirt, staring at me in disbelief. "You're not planning to go back to the company?" "A year ago, I stepped away from the company, partly because of health reasons. but also because I played the villain too many times for Joshua, offending one of the other partners in the process. That partner was the tech lead, the backbone of new project development. Joshua couldn't afford to cross him. When tensions reached a stalemate, I used my illness as an excuse to withdraw from company affairs, giving space and avoiding confrontation. Over the past year, Joshua had been busy pulling strings, and now he no longer had to answer to anyone. But I didn't want to go back. You've been managing things just fine. Whether I'm there or not doesn't really matter, I said evenly. What do you mean it doesn't matter? If you're feeling better and want to work again, wouldn't it be better to help me? He pushed. I shook my head. I want to do something in my actual field. He ran his hand through his hair in frustration, still trying to persuade me, but I gave him a reason he couldn't argue with. Don't forget, my original dream was to be a financial analyst. Not your HR, your accountant, your PR rep, or your human shield. Joshua's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. He fell silent, utterly defeated, because he knew, if I was going to restart the dream I had put on hold for him, he was the one person with no right to stand in my way. Chapter 12. Joshua's deliberate attentiveness didn't even last a full month. After all, he was President Han, constantly swamped with responsibilities. It wasn't like I had the time to care. Either. He had his business empire to run, and I was busy running around to different job interviews. One day, I was walking down the street when someone handed me a flyer for driving lessons. I glanced at it for a while, then signed up for the earliest available private instructor sessions. Back in college, I had already thought about learning to drive, but just as I was about to enroll, there was a widely publicized car accident on the news, and Joshua, worried I'd one day get into a crash too, told me not to bother. He promised he'd drive me anywhere I needed to go, and I believed him, until the day my parents traveled thousands of miles to visit, and Joshua walked out early from our farewell dinner, let alone accompanying them to the airport afterward. So I ended up hailing a cab with my parents, watching my over 50-year-old parents, sweating under the scorching sun, lugging heavy bags and standing on the roadside with me. I hated myself in that moment. How could I have been so naive to believe a man would be willing to drive me everywhere for the rest of my life? When I later went to a dealership to look at cars, I saw someone I knew and casually asked the salesperson, "That girl doing the paperwork, she seems kind of inexperienced. How did she land the job so quickly?" No idea which big shot pulled strings to give her a comfy spot. The salesperson replied with a look of helplessness. "She messes things up constantly, and no one's allowed to say anything. But don't worry, sis, I'll get someone else to process your order." I couldn't help but laugh. So much for resigning. Turns out she was just getting pampered somewhere else. Joshua really does go out of his way to protect the ones he cares about. That night, Joshua came home drunk after a business dinner. I was about to cook up some hangover soup but decided I couldn't be bothered. Instead, I opened the top kitchen cabinet. Sure enough, second compartment from the left, there was a large jar of honey. I made him a cup with warm water and handed it over. Joshua drank it down appreciatively. I couldn't stop myself from letting out a cold laugh. He looked at me blankly, then at the empty cup, finally realizing the meaning behind it. His face darkened instantly. He hated when I brought up old wounds. But I did it anyway. "Where did she go after she resigned?" "How would I know?" he snapped, then caught himself and lowered his tone, trying to reason with me. "Let it go. She's just a young girl. No background or connections. Why keep holding on to this?" I let out a cold, mocking laugh and said nothing more. Maybe feeling guilty, Joshua didn't leave right away. Instead, he sat beside me, trying to act like he was keeping me company, and watched some TV. The primetime melodrama was at its peak, the main couple finally overcoming all odds to live happily ever after. The male lead proposed. The female lead was in tears. On screen, love overflowed. Off screen, we sat in silence, expressionless. I changed the channel to the financial news. I suppose that was the last time anything close to the topic of marriage ever came up between us. I brought it up by accident. He avoided it on purpose. Chapter 13. On the day I went to pick up my car, Joshua had originally said he'd come with me, but in the end, he flaked again. I figured something must have come up at the company, but when I arrived at the dealership, The salesperson gave me a gossip-filled look and told me that the pampered paper pusher had suddenly taken sick leave due to acute appendicitis. Her mysterious backer? Definitely someone with serious pull. The person who came to pick her up was driving a Bentley. I nodded, pretending to understand. After all, you can't split one man into two. An actual medical emergency is more urgent than the unlikely risk of a car accident. A young, newly graduated girl from out of town does seem more fragile and deserving of protection than a nearly 30 woman who's seen too much. The salesperson, though, still seemed concerned for me. After handling all the paperwork, he asked, "You're not super confident driving yet, how about I drive you home?" I politely declined. No need. Eventually, I have to be able to hit the road on my own. I drove slowly, got honked at constantly, and took nearly 3 times longer than normal, but I made it home safely. It wasn't until I tried to park that I realized driving on the road was nothing compared to backing into a parking space. I kept trying again and again, but I just couldn't get the angle right. Crooked, off-center, too far from the line. I was dripping with sweat and ready to scream when someone knocked on my window. It was Joshua. He'd come home earlier than me, apparently. Guess Virginia's appendectomy went pretty smoothly. He told me to get out of the car, slid into the driver's seat, and backed the car in cleanly in one go. On our way upstairs, he asked why I didn't call him to help. Turns out one of our neighbors had posted a video in the building group chat showing me struggling in the parking lot. That's how he found out. I paused, stunned, in that half hour of frustration, feeling helpless and stuck. It never once occurred to me to call him. Maybe after all the times he failed to show up, my instinct to rely on him had just vanished. He didn't wait for an answer, just glanced down at his phone. During the 10 or so seconds it took the elevator to rise from the basement to the top floor, he didn't lift his head once. I watched him the entire time, watched him typing, the faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Watched him give the time he was physically spending with me to whoever it was on that screen who could still make him smile. It brought back a flood of memories. Back when we were just starting the company, trying to save money. We rented a tiny 2-bedroom in a residential complex for our office. We scrubbed stains off the walls ourselves and stuck up the company's name, letter by letter. One of the letters tore while we were putting it up. I tried to fix it, but a crack remained. Since the letters were red, I pulled out my lipstick and filled in the tear. He told me he'd buy me a new one. I shook my head proudly. The CFO didn't approve the budget. I can just switch to using A4 paper. He looked at me with so much tenderness, holding my hand in front of that wall. "Lily," he said, "if our company survives, I'll marry you." And the company did survive. From Series A to Series C, we secured round after round of funding, but somewhere along the way, he forgot to keep that promise. The elevator dinged, signaling we'd reached the top floor. The doors opened. I stepped out first, leaving only one sentence behind. "Joshua, let's end this." Chapter 14. When Joshua walked in, I had already finished packing. He grabbed my wrist, holding back his anger. "What is this supposed to mean?" Exactly what it sounds like. His eyes were filled with disbelief. "Why? Haven't I done enough these past few weeks? How long are you going to keep this up?" I've said it 1,000 times, there was nothing going on between me and Virginia. She's already been fired. What more do you want? Looking at the wounded innocent expression on his face, I couldn't help but laugh. Men really are creatures who want to have it all: respect, sympathy, even moral high ground. They'll do the ugliest things, then act like the ones who've been wronged. How does disappointment accumulate? Maybe it started one night when I happened to pass the parking lot and saw that his car was already back, but he hadn't come upstairs. That's when I realized, maybe his work was never that busy. Maybe he was only home long enough to shower and sleep. Or maybe it was the time my laptop crashed and I went to borrow his. I typed in my birthday, like always, to unlock it, and got the wrong password message. So he forgot my birthday? The signs had been written long before. I never really cared that much about that girl. With his wealth and status, women throwing themselves at him was inevitable, wave after wave. It wasn't my job to keep them away, and I couldn't if I tried. All I wanted was to be loved, genuinely, carefully, consistently, to not become just another decorative object in this house, to not disappear so completely that One day, when I break, no one even notices. I walked to the living room, bent down, and pulled a box out from the bottom cabinet. I opened the lid and held it in front of him. Inside were photos, pictures we once took together. Almost all of them torn down the middle, split clean in two. I found these on my birthday. I said calmly. I had nothing else to do that day, so I started digging through old things. I could remember exactly what was happening in each of these pictures. Every scene, every moment, reminded me how deeply we used to love each other. That night, I asked myself, Lillian, after everything this man has done to you, why are you still here? And I answered, because I couldn't bear to leave, because we used to be so good. These photos, they were the things that held me back. So from that day on, every time I felt unhappy, I tore one up. I promised myself, when the last one is gone, I'll leave for good. And you know what? They weren't hard to rip at all, because we stopped taking pictures together a long time ago. The funny part is, I've almost finished tearing them all, and you still had no idea. Watching Joshua stare into that box of shredded memories, eyes red, face falling apart, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. After all, if the love had been real, then I shouldn't be the only one in pain. I reached into the box and pulled out the one photo that was still whole. I stared at it, lost in thought. This was the last picture we ever took together. It was that time when a client owed us money, and we waited outside his house late into the night to collect. On the way back, I fell asleep in the cab. You didn't wake me. You hung my purse around your neck and carried me home on your back. That road was so long. I woke up halfway, and in the streetlight, I took this photo of our shadows together. Back then, I thought I'd be walking down every road with you for the rest of my life. It was beautiful, and such a shame. My fingers slowly tightened. Joshua saw what I was about to do. Panic flashed across his face. He reached for me. Don't. I flicked my wrist, and all those shredded pieces of our past flew into the air, tearing through his field of vision. Chaotic and unstoppable, he reached out, desperate to catch them. But of course, you can't catch the collapse of something so massive. You can't outrun a fall that was fated from the start. Rip. One last photo. I tore it in half, and threw it into the storm between us. Joshua, I said. We're over. Chapter 15. I got back on the path I was supposed to take, landing an offer at a securities firm. Granted, the initial title was just intern. For someone nearing 30, accepting that title took real courage, and the awkwardness peaked the moment I stepped into the manager's office to report in, because the chair behind the desk swiveled around, and my direct supervisor turned out to be Claude, my junior by 2 years back in university. I'd long heard how brutal the competition in finance had become. Campus recruitment required at least a master's degree from a top university, and lateral hires faced even stricter standards. For someone like me, an undergrad who had been out of the game for years, getting even a probationary opportunity like this was already a stroke of luck. I should have had no complaints. And yet, standing in front of someone who used to trail behind me with 1,000 questions, and now had the power to command me, I couldn't help but feel small. In the years I was gone, in this cutthroat battlefield, no one stood still. Thankfully, there was no pity in Claude's eyes. He didn't even give me time to indulge in self-pity. He got straight to business. Senior, I need a deep dive industry research report on the new energy sector, plus a policy impact analysis. Can you get it to me in a week? I stood there, stunned. A deep dive report? He was assigning that to an intern? Wasn't this a bit unorthodox? Claude raised an eyebrow and gave a slight smile. Then, seriously, you're the one who taught me this. If you aim for the moon, you might land among the stars. But if you only aim for the stars, you might miss everything. Then he added, besides, you've handled companies like Unicorn. With your industry experience, did you really think I'd treat you like a typical intern? I was momentarily taken aback, then smiled, somewhat at ease. Funny how life circles back. Of course I wasn't a real intern. My former classmates were now high-ranking execs at top-tier financial institutions. I had access to information and resources whenever I needed, even though I'd stepped away from professional work. The past few years I'd seen a company grow from nothing. None of those experiences were wasted. Thanks to Claude's aggressive push, I transitioned to full-time quickly and took on meaningful roles within the core team. When Joshua came to find me, he made an entrance so grand it was almost absurd. He showed up with the head of investment banking, walked through the floor under a sea of curious eyes, and came straight to my desk. Without hesitation, he placed a hand on my shoulder and said to the department head, "This is my business partner and my girlfriend." I stared at this version of Joshua who acted like he had total amnesia. After much inner struggle, I still didn't tear down his facade in front of the crowd. I forced a smile and greeted the investment banking head, only to find Joshua inching even closer. He placed a hand on my waist, leaned in near my ear, and whispered intimately, "Dinner tonight?" My body went stiff with discomfort, but in that moment, with all those eyes on us, I couldn't even resist. Chapter 16. What do you mean by that? I glared at Joshua furiously in the deserted hallway of the office building. The company is preparing to go public. I just came by to say hi to the investment bankers, Joshua said, his eyes darting around, still trying to hold his ground. You know that's not what I'm asking. Joshua's voice dropped with a guilty tremor. I never agreed to break up. If there's something wrong with your brain, go get it treated. Don't come looking for me. I had no patience left to argue with him. I flung those words behind me and turned to leave. You just want to get married, don't you? Joshua shouted, as if he'd made some grand decision. Fine. Let's do it. Go get your household registration book. We'll go to the marriage office right now. I turned back slowly, looking at the man in front of me who seemed to think he was making a huge concession. A sharp wave of grief surged in my chest, stinging my nose and clouding my vision with tears. How much had I longed for a proposal from him over the past 7 years? I secretly followed tons of wedding bloggers on my private account, saving scenes and decorations I liked, just in case. For when he finally popped the question, I would casually mention where a classmate held their wedding, secretly hoping he'd ask me, "How was it? Should we consider that place too?" Every time he suddenly invited me out, I'd get nervous, afraid I'd be proposed to while wearing something ridiculous. On holidays like Chishi or my birthday, when midnight passed without any surprise, I'd quietly sigh, so he didn't plan anything after all. I waited and waited until all my expectations burned to ashes. Even when I finally chose to leave, I did it willingly. I never saw myself as a victim, but right now, this moment truly broke me. So he did know everything. He just chose to give me nothing. Joshua looked panicked, clumsily reaching out to wipe my tears. Lily, don't cry. I turned my head away, unwilling to even look at him. I stared at the vast, blank wall and said, word by word, Joshua, if you still feel even a shred of guilt toward me, please, don't ever show up in front of me again. Chapter 17. After Joshua's little scene, gossip spread like wildfire through the company. People from the investment banking department, whether under someone's instruction or simply for convenience, began dropping by our department every now and then to chat with me about Joshua's company's IPO preparations. After a few of these incidents, the office rumor mill kicked into full gear. So that's how she got promoted so fast. Turns out she's got connections. If she's already the soon-to-be wife of a listed company's CEO, why is she still taking up space here? Can't she leave a spot for those of us without a silver spoon? Better watch your mouth. Even the head of investment banking shows her some respect. For all you know, she might be your boss tomorrow. Every time I walked through the office, unfamiliar and probing eyes would land on me. These rumors felt like an invisible web, crudely reducing all my hard work to a title no one dared to say aloud, Joshua's woman. No matter how far I ran, I was still caught in his web. For the first time, I seriously thought about severing all ties with him. I sent a stock transfer agreement to Joshua's email, offering to sell all my shares at the base price. His call came almost instantly. You want to give up your shares? The company's about to go public, and now you want out? If you're okay with it, just sign. You won't be losing anything. Also, please stop letting your investment bankers come to me about company matters, I said calmly, ready to hang up. Lillian, Joshua was practically frantic. You helped build this company from the ground up, and now you just want to walk away? Are you really in such a rush to cut me off completely? The company will have nothing to do with me from now on. I paused, and neither will you. After Joshua signed the agreement with the investment bank, I officially accepted the olive branch Claude extended and jumped ship with him to a prestigious private equity firm. When Joshua found out that I had resigned right after he signed the investment banking deal, he was so furious he called me more than 10 times. I blocked him. The only communication I maintained was through email, urging him to finalize the stock transfer process. Joshua's replies were filled with rambling emotional essays. When I didn't respond, he started sending me articles about how IPOs lead to financial freedom, trying to educate me, indirectly, of course, on how foolish it was to sell my shares before the listing. Of course I knew that holding onto the shares and selling at a peak post-IPO would maximize profit. But setting aside the fact that IPO preparations, starting from broker guidance to final approval, take at least a year. Even after listing, founding shareholders are typically subject to a 3-year lockup before they can sell. Who knew how long I'd be entangled with Joshua if I kept waiting? I didn't have that kind of patience. Besides, I was already back in the world of finance, the top of the pyramid. Financial freedom was only a matter of time. When Joshua refused to cooperate, I played hardball. I went directly to the company's second largest shareholder and asked if they were interested in buying my shares. The news quickly reached Joshua. He called me using someone else's number, his voice lifeless and mournful. "Lily, are you really going to team up with outsiders against me?" No one turns down shares in a company that's about to go public, especially not the second largest shareholder. But doing this meant Joshua could lose control of the company. It could even trigger internal conflict, never a good look for a company on the brink of an IPO. I was silent for a moment before speaking coldly. "In any case, I'm leaving the company. If you don't want the shares, someone else will. Think it over." Joshua's breathing faltered. His voice trembled. "Lily, can't you see how hard I'm trying to keep you? I know I let you down, but not the company. It's like a child we raised together. Can you really cut ties like this, one piece at a time? There's nothing left to tie us together," I said, taking a deep breath. "I'm willing to give you priority on the shares, but it has to be now." Chapter 18. The documents for the stock transfer had to be submitted to the tax bureau. Technically, it could have been handled by a finance staffer on our behalf, but Joshua insisted that we both go in person, figuring it was probably the last time we'd see each other. I agreed. Joshua arrived before me. Today, he wasn't wearing his usual business suit, just an old, slightly faded white shirt. His shoulders were broad, sleeves half rolled up, revealing lean forearms. When the breeze lifted the hem of his shirt, he looked even thinner. From a distance, his whole appearance carried a strangely youthful air, almost boyish. Not matching his age, only the stark loneliness etched into his face gave away his weariness and despair. As I approached without a word, he seemed to sense me somehow and looked up. Our eyes met from afar. For a split second, it almost felt like 7 years ago, like he was waiting outside the classroom for me to finish class. I glanced at the half-burned cigarette in his hand but didn't say anything unnecessary. "Let's go in." While filling out the stock transfer form at the information desk, Joshua kept making mistakes, wrong characters, wrong numbers, ruining several sheets. Finally, I pushed him aside, filled out the form myself, and signed it. He just stood there, staring at me in a daze. Then he suddenly said in a wistful tone, "This feels like we're getting divorced." I couldn't be bothered to respond. I calmly finished the paperwork, then took the documents from his folder and handed them to the clerk. But after flipping through them, the staff member impatiently said we were missing 2 required documents. There were still people waiting in line behind us, so I pulled Joshua aside to the tax bureau entrance and said flatly, "Call the finance person and have them send the missing documents now." Joshua rubbed his nose and muttered awkwardly, "The finance guy's on a business trip." "Joshua." I finally lost my temper. "What the hell are you trying to pull? Are you going to suddenly realize you forgot your ID next? Or maybe break your hand so you can't sign? Do you think this is funny?" There was no way a senior finance staffer with a 6-figure salary would make such a rookie mistake. I couldn't even be bothered to expose his little tricks. Joshua looked embarrassed, bowing his head, but he still stubbornly clung on. "Do you really not love me anymore? Not even a little?" When I hesitated, he grabbed both my wrists and pulled my hands to his chest. "But I still love you. The longer you've been gone, the more I realize how much I love you. What am I supposed to do when I have a headache? I want you to rub my back. When I wake up hungover, I crave your hangover soup. I miss you so much I'm going insane. What do I do? He really thought this was a divorce drama. I yanked my hands free, not replying to a single word he said, and said coldly, "Go get the missing documents. I've got work to do, don't waste my time." At that moment, a look of utter despair filled Joshua's eyes. Chapter 19. Actually, the moment I saw Joshua today, I recognized that he was wearing the shirt I gave him back in college. I had no idea where he'd even dug it out from. I wasn't entirely unmoved. I just didn't want to give him any emotional leverage, so I deliberately ignored it. But in the end, those little gestures still got to me. How to dispel sorrow? Only with work. After joining Claude and switching jobs, the workload became even more intense. In private equity, it's not just about researching publicly listed companies on the secondary market, we also have to scout promising companies on the primary market, invest early, and aim to profit when they eventually go public. I adapted to the primary market work as fast as I could, only for Claude to drop a piece of news that was both laughable and frustrating. Our boss was interested in Unicorn, and wanted in on a pre-IPO round. I had deliberately hidden my past relationship with Joshua from the new company, but I couldn't just leave 5 years blank on my resume. It clearly listed the roles I held at his company. Now that the boss was interested in Unicorn, my resume instantly made me the most obvious candidate. I had virtually no grounds to say no. "If you're not comfortable with it, I'll come up with another excuse for the boss," Claude offered, though his eyes showed clear hesitation. I knew very well, for both of us, having just joined a new firm, this was the time to make our mark. It wasn't the moment to act difficult in front of the boss. "It's fine," I said with a smile. "If I handle Unicorn's due diligence, it'll definitely be faster than anyone else." After all, I knew everyone there. When I interviewed Unicorn's executives for the due diligence, several of them started off by calling me Director Zhao. The whole session felt less like an investigation and more like a performance review. I pushed past the awkwardness and, maintaining my role as a private equity investigator, asked all the questions I needed to. The final interview was with the HR director who had worked with me the longest. Beyond just a working relationship, we'd had a good personal rapport. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dared to fire Joshua's assistant directly on my instruction back then. Unfortunately, she didn't treat this as a serious due diligence interview at all. Instead, she looked at me earnestly and started confiding in me, telling me how off Joshua had been lately. The man who used to throw himself into work was now often missing from his own office. His secretary couldn't even find him half the time. A while back, he even got into a conflict with a client and ended up losing one of the company's biggest accounts. I noted it all down. These were red flags that could directly affect the company's valuation. As for her advice, I gave no reaction either way. And that lost client? I didn't even have to think about it. It was definitely Jack. All that effort I'd put into maintaining that relationship, completely wasted. After finishing interviews with the entire executive team, there was still one unavoidable person left to face, the CEO. I'd been in Joshua's office countless times. We used to burn the midnight oil here, arguing over the tiniest design details for a product. This was a place I'd once poured my soul into. I truly hoped to see it grow and thrive. That's why, even when I could have sold my shares to another buyer for a higher price, I never once considered handing over control of the company. Because whether it was the second largest shareholder or the ambitious tech director waiting in the wings, none of them had Joshua's level of insight or pure dedication to the company. He was, and still is, the best person to steer Unicorn forward as long as he stops self-sabotaging. As part of standard procedure, I raised a question to Joshua Hahn regarding the disputed matter. President Hahn, regarding the termination of the company's cooperation with Jack, do you have a reasonable explanation for that? Joshua's expression darkened. He had his eyes on you. Isn't that reason enough? I took a deep breath and, despite the frustration boiling inside me, chose to stay silent. I simply noted down the following in my notebook. Primary decision maker demonstrates significant emotional volatility and operational unpredictability, posing potential risks to the company's long-term development. Once I'd asked everything I needed, I closed my notebook and stood up to leave. Joshua followed, grabbing my hand. "Lily, can we talk a bit more, please?" The blinds on the semi-transparent glass walls of his office weren't closed. I had no idea how many eyes outside were watching, intentionally or not, glancing in through that pane of glass. I didn't want to be seen pulling away from him. I needed to maintain the professionalism of a formal interview. I pulled my hand out of his grasp, refusing to sit back down. Go ahead. Joshua had no choice but to speak while standing there. Lily, these past few days seeing you at the company has made me genuinely happy. Whenever you were in a meeting with them, I kept walking past the conference room just to catch a glimpse of you. For a few fleeting moments, it almost felt like the old days, when you'd tirelessly help me handle all the social nonsense I didn't want to deal with. I kept thinking, if you hadn't helped me build this company and had gone on with your current career path, you'd probably be wildly successful too. But without you, I wouldn't be here at all. I cut him off. I've never regretted anything from the past. Starting a business is a 1 in a million gamble, and we both gained something from it. I got what I deserved, and I hope you'll get what you truly want as well. The road ahead for the company is still long. I hope you know what you're doing. He looked like he still wanted to speak, eyes heavy with emotion, feelings I no longer wanted to carry for him. Thankfully, my phone rang. It was the sales rep from the dealership where I'd bought my car, reminding me about my scheduled maintenance and asking when I'd arrive. On my way, I said, without ending the call, and quickly walked out of his office. Chapter 20. On the way to the dealership. My phone kept ringing. I didn't even need to check. I knew it was Joshua. I declined the call, only to have a text pop up. Can you at least let me finish what I wanted to say? No, I couldn't. I glanced away and pressed harder on the gas. While waiting at a red light, I noticed Joshua's car in my rearview mirror. He had followed me all the way to the dealership. The salesperson took my keys, walked me through the maintenance checklist, and then led me toward the customer lounge to wait. As we passed through the main hall, I caught sight of a familiar figure at another workstation and suddenly remembered where I'd seen this place before. Of course, life really does have a sense of irony. Before I could say anything, Joshua, who had been speed walking through the hall to catch up to me, was already a glaring presence that caught someone else's eye. Sure enough, before he could reach me, a cheerful, excited voice called out, "President Hahn!" The moment the VIP arrived, Virginia practically threw her clipboard aside and sprinted toward him. "You finally came to see me." Joshua stood there awkwardly, taking 2 hasty steps back as if trying to escape. His eyes darted toward me in panic. I watched the scene from afar like a soap opera, gave a cold laugh, and followed the salesperson into the VIP lounge. Joshua couldn't enter the lounge, but by the time my car was ready, he was already waiting next to it. He pressed his fingers to his brow in frustration and said, "You knew she worked here, didn't you? Look, I know you've got the wrong idea. I only helped her get a job, that's all." I gave a dismissive smile. "Do whatever you want." He reached out and pressed a hand against the car door, stopping me from getting in. "Can you please just let me finish? Can you give me a chance to explain?" With people walking all around the dealership, I didn't want to make a scene, so I let him get in the car with me to talk as much as he wanted. Inside the closed space, his voice trembled. "I was just a little nicer to her because she reminded me of who you used to be." I scoffed. "Don't insult me. She reminded me of the you who hadn't been hurt, the you I failed to protect." I kept fantasizing that I could make up for it with her. "I could never shield you. I always sacrificed you. But do you think that made me feel good? Do you think I could sleep for even a minute after agreeing to let you meet Jack and sign that contract? Do you think I didn't feel pain watching you work yourself into a stomach bleed and end up in the hospital? Do you think it didn't crush me to see you getting yelled at and being forced to step back from the company you helped build? Why couldn't you just give me a little more time? I would have married you. I just wanted to wait until I was a little more capable." His eyes were red, voice hoarse from shouting, as if he were the one who'd been wronged. What kind of twisted logic was this? He owed me, poured his guilt into someone else, and still thought of himself as some kind of tragic romantic? I yanked my hand from his and slammed my palm down on the steering wheel. "Oh wow, you've really dressed that excuse up nicely. Huh? Being emotionally unfaithful has never sounded so noble. Are you proud of yourself? You feel guilty? Then what have you done for me? Have you comforted me? Apologized? No, you did nothing. You just cowardly avoided anything that made you feel guilty, including me. Admit it. Joshua, you don't love me anymore. You're just holding on out of obligation. So why the hell should I stick around just to watch you go through the motions? Do I not deserve a love that burns bright like it did in the beginning? Do I not deserve to be properly loved? Why the hell should I play the role of the used-up woman left behind? And the funniest part is, I'm not even your wife. Don't talk to me about regret. What do I owe you? Why should I wait around for you to finally regret this? Joshua was speechless. He looked at me like I'd just stabbed him, clenching the seat cushion with trembling fingers, stubbornly clinging to a confrontation that had long since passed its expiration date. He'd stirred my emotions again. I wanted to keep yelling, but then I caught sight of her in the rearview mirror. That girl, standing by the road, peeking timidly in our direction. And suddenly, it all felt meaningless. I took a deep breath and cut the crap with one final warning. Get that damn thing out of here. Don't leave it around to piss me off. Chapter 21. I submitted the due diligence report through the proper channels. The boss praised it for being thorough and well prepared. But after that, there was radio silence. I assumed they'd taken all factors into consideration and ultimately decided not to move forward with the investment. The next time I saw Joshua was at a college classmate's wedding. The bride was a close friend of mine, and the groom happened to be one of Joshua's old buddies, so avoiding this encounter wasn't an option. The bride and I had very similar taste. She often came to me for fashion advice, especially for something as important as her wedding. From the color of the ribbons to the style of the wrist corsages, she asked my opinion on everything. Since I had no use for it myself, I sent her all the wedding photos and decor references I had collected over the years. She combined the ideas, and the final setup of the wedding banquet turned out nearly identical to the scene I had once imagined for my own. Joshua had originally been assigned to a table far from mine, but at some point, he must have switched seats with someone and ended up right beside me. I didn't go out of my way to dodge his intentional move. This was someone else's wedding, and we weren't going to steal the show. He sat beside me without saying a word. We had already said everything there was to say. Both the beautiful and the ugly. There was nothing left between us. His gaze occasionally drifted toward me. I had no idea what he was looking at, or what he was thinking. As for me, sitting in the audience at that moment, watching the bride's father place her hand into the groom's, and seeing the couple link arms and walk down the white carpet together, through a sea of flowers toward the center stage, I did feel a twinge of regret. I had loved someone with all my heart, and then left with nothing left to give. The phrase "you made your bet, now live with it" might sound bold and decisive, but the long, dull ache behind it is something only I can truly understand. At the end of the ceremony, the MC asked the bride who she wanted to give her bouquet to. Smiling, the bride spoke my name. Her voice trembled slightly. "I have a friend," she said, "and I sincerely hope she finds happiness." Her gaze landed gently, firmly on me, without shifting even slightly toward Joshua, who sat beside me, and I realized that's exactly how I should be too. After the wedding, I walked away holding the bouquet wrapped in tulle and still damp with dew. I vaguely heard someone calling my name behind me, but I knew I wasn't going to turn back. Story 2. At 18, I picked up an abandoned school bully. I tried hard for a long time, but I could never warm his heart. Then, his childhood sweetheart appeared. Only then did I realize he could be gentle. Just not with me. The day I let go, I lied, saying, "I'll be back soon," but I never returned. 7 years later, on set, we met again. He was now an award-winning actor, and he grabbed me. "You said you'd be back soon? Where did you go?" Chapter 01. My palms were sweating with nerves. Philip, the newly crowned Best Actor, was only 5 meters behind me. All I had to do was turn around, and we would come face to face. The assistant director spoke. "Philip, in the next scene, you reunite with your ex. You need to show lingering affection and reluctance." Philip scoffed softly. "Affection? Assistant director, do you think it's inappropriate? She's an ex. What's there to be affectionate about?" His voice was the same as before, carefree and unruly. At 18, it was with this very voice that he used to call my name, softly or firmly. "Selena." The conversation continued behind me. I didn't catch what the assistant director said next, but Philip's indifferent voice clearly reached my ears. "My ex? I've long forgotten her. I'm not the type to go back to what I've discarded." Oh, as someone who had been discarded, I had no intention of reuniting with him either. Finish the shoot and go our separate ways sounded good. As I was thinking this, my coworker suddenly called out loudly, "Selena, did you find the props yet?" Chapter 02. The sudden silence behind me was palpable. I grabbed the prop and hurried away. Philip didn't come after me. Maybe he hadn't heard, or maybe he did hear, but he simply didn't care. While setting up the set, I told my coworker, "Don't call me Selena next time." "Why not? Selena's a lovely name. Little S sounds more professional." My coworker laughed and accepted the reasoning. This was my first project as an assistant director. Before joining the crew, I already knew Philip was the lead actor. He's the son of celebrities, blessed with resources across half the entertainment industry. And to top it off, he's genuinely talented, winning Best Actor at 25. Unfortunately, I happened to be his first love. I had hesitated about joining, but in the end, I didn't want to give up such a good opportunity, so I came. I promised myself that he must not recognize me, or else I'd be done for, because 7 years ago, our breakup had been anything but smooth. In my letter, I wrote, "I knew you were a star kid from the beginning. I only approached you to dig up dirt on your family. Honestly, I don't like bad boys at all. I prefer refined guys. Let's not meet again. Bye." The more carefree the words, the more pathetic my departure. I wondered how Philip felt when he read that letter. But knowing him, he was not the forgiving type. If he caught me now, my career could very well be over. My coworker said, "Philip looks even more handsome in person than on TV. Amazing genes. Well, look at who his parents are, former Best Actor and actress. Even if they grew up randomly, they'd still be better looking than most people." I love Philip's aura. So refined and elegant. I bet he was the school heartthrob back in the day. I nearly choked. Philip? A school heartthrob? So wrong. No solo no era el más guapo de la escuela. Sino que era el maten al que todos evitaban. Nunca podré olvidar la primera vez que lo six. Acababa de pularse. Cubierto de moratons. La lluvia caía a mares. La gente en la calle pasaba a toda prisa. Pero él, como si estuviera muerto, se sentaba en el borde del camino sin moverse. Hasta que me acerqué. Él levantó la mirada. Vite. En ese momento, su tono era como el de un perro rabioso. Como si la siguiente segunda fuera a destrozarme. Pero no me fui. Con las manos temblorosas. Puse mi pequeño paraguas de flores sobre su cabeza. Así fue como empezó todo entre Philip y yo. Sacudí la cabeza, alejando esos recuerdos. Terminamos de organizar la escena y tuvimos un descanso. El set estaba demasiado ruidoso, así que me escabulí hacia la escalera. Apenas abrí la puerta. El olor a tabaco me hizo toser. Philip estaba allí, en la oscuridad, con la punta de su cigarro encendida, brillando en rojo. Alzo los parpados lentamente y me miró. Igual que en aquel entonces. Chapter 03. The stairwell was dark and quiet. "Sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you." I lowered my head and started to leave. Philip stopped me. "What kind of work do you do?" "Assistant director." "Just graduated?" "Yes. Being an assistant director right after graduation is quite impressive." "Thank you, Mr. Philip. How old are you?" 25. He chuckled softly, lazily saying, "We're the same age. And you're calling me Mr. The assistant director calls you Mr. too. And he's 43. Then say it again." "Me?" With reluctance, I said, "Mr. Philip." In the darkness, I couldn't see clearly, but it seemed like Philip smiled. But it was that cold, emotionless smile. I felt a chill run through me. Still, I had a glimmer of hope. He definitely wouldn't recognize me. Compared to 7 years ago, I had almost become a different person. From a pale, skinny sprout to someone people now called a beauty. Even my relatives barely recognized me, let alone now. In the darkness, "Mr. Philip, I'll let you rest. I'll head back now." "Wait." He called me back again. "What's your name?" Philip suddenly asked. Chapter 04. Selena. "My name is Selena. Ever used another name?" "No." Philip was silent. A cold sweat broke out all over my body. I used to be called Cecilia, but I later changed my name. He lied to me once, so now I've lied to him once. Guess that makes us even. During the summer after my first year of high school, I found Philip on a street corner. He said he had nowhere to go and no family. I believed him. I thought he was like me, an unwanted, poor kid. When I was little, my mother resented me for being a daughter. After she and my father divorced, they each started new families, and they both had sons. Neither of them wanted me, and I was sent to live in my aunt's basement. Since childhood, I have been very obedient, because being obedient meant, at the very least, I could still eat. Philip and I were two completely different types of people. He smoked, fought, and did all sorts of bad things. I was quiet and reserved, knowing nothing beyond studying. In my second year of high school, Philip and I were assigned to the same class. I sat in the front row, and he sat in the back. No one knew what kind of family he came from. Some even rumored he had no parents and was homeless. At school, we were like strangers, but no one knew that every night, Philip would knock on the basement window. I cleared a small space on the floor for him, so he could sleep there. The next morning, before my aunt's family woke up, he would quietly leave, as if he'd never been there. Philip often skipped class, and he was always injured. Every time I would apply medicine for him, he'd say, "Cecilia, can you be a little gentler? Call me Selena." Oh, Selena. Selena was my nickname, given by my late grandmother. I liked this name more than Cecilia. Since Philip always came to crash on my floor, I subconsciously thought he was even more pitiful than me. Additionally, I developed an illusion. When I forgot my textbook in class and got questioned by the teacher, Philip would walk from the back row to the front, throwing his own textbook onto my desk. When I was bullied by a student from another class, feeling too wrong to argue, Philip would stand in front of me, saying that I was under his protection. I mistakenly thought we shared a mutual understanding. It wasn't until later that I realized there was no such understanding at all. Philip was a celebrity's kid, with countless properties and sports cars at home. One of his shoes could buy me a season's worth of clothes. He was just using me to annoy his family. When did I realize that? It was probably the day Amelia showed up. My thoughts were interrupted. Back at the film set, a cup of milk tea was shoved into my hands. A colleague said, "Amelia came to visit the set again. She bought milk tea for everyone. Look! The rich beauty and the film star standing together, they're the perfect match." I looked over at them in the distance. Amelia was acting coy. Philip tilted his head, listening patiently, like everyone else. I couldn't look away from this beautiful scene. Suddenly, Philip seemed to sense something. He looked over at me. Chapter 05. I immediately lowered my head. When I looked up again, Philip was no longer looking at me. It was as if what just happened was merely my imagination. Amelia was still acting coy. "Brother Philip, after filming wraps up, come with me to Paris to see the fashion show, okay?" Her tone was exactly the same as it was 7 years ago. I couldn't help but fall into thought. In high school, Philip and I always maintained a pure classmate relationship, until after the college entrance exams ended. That summer, we had a class reunion, which lasted until midnight. One time, after everyone left, I was followed by a few drunk thugs. Philip appeared out of nowhere and used his fists to drive them away. Maybe it was the burden of academics finally being lifted. Maybe it was because we were adults now. Suddenly, Philip looked much more appealing to me. I gathered my courage and confessed. Later, I took the initiative to hold hands, hug, and have our first kiss. Philip wasn't passionate, but he didn't reject me either. He was still like a hard, unyielding rock, and not a single tender word came out of his mouth. But in certain aspects, he was an adequate boyfriend. For example, he was always there when I called, and he was generous with me. Philip never took me to meet his friends. Once, I went to a pool hall to find him, wanting to surprise him. Instead, he looked stern and said impatiently, "Don't come here anymore." I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought it was just his personality, until Amelia showed up. She wore an expensive little dress. Her makeup was perfect, she looked like a ray of light, entering my world. She pouted and called him brother. Brother Philip. Why did you come here? Brother Philip. Where's the Ferrari you just bought? Take me for a spin. The word Ferrari nearly made me choke. Amelia looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. Brother Philip. Who's she? Hi. I'm Philip's girlfriend. Huh? Are you kidding? Brother Philip could never be interested in you. I'm his future girlfriend. We even have a family arrangement. Bullshit. Philip pushed Amelia out with a dark expression. Don't listen to her. I never agreed to any engagement. His explanation was weak. Later, Philip's parents came to find me, and that's when I learned that Philip was a celebrity's child. Not just an ordinary celebrity kid either. His family practically controlled half the entertainment industry. Philip had a bad relationship with his parents. He had purposely transferred from a private school to an ordinary high school. He even purposely didn't go home. His parents were away most of the time, not caring much about their son, having no clue what he was up to every day. That day, at the end of our conversation, his father said to me, "Miss, you may not know this, but Philip is very rebellious. He's with you just to provoke us. He doesn't really like you. He's done this kind of thing plenty of times before. If you don't believe me, just watch how he treats Amelia. He likes Amelia. They've played together since they were kids, and he just hasn't realized his feelings yet. Miss, you and us, you're not on the same path." It was like a bolt from the blue. Later, I realized his father wasn't lying. Even though he complained about her, Philip had a lot of patience with Amelia. He tolerated her tantrums, indulged her whims. The worst incident was when Amelia made fun of my poverty one moment, and in the next, Philip appeared, and she put on a look of grievance. Brother Philip. Cecilia just deliberately pushed me into those thugs. I was so scared. Philip suddenly looked upset. Selena, I told you not to mess with her. Amelia stood behind him, making a triumphant face. That was when I understood. Philip wasn't a cold iron tree. He just wouldn't bloom for me. At the end of August, I accepted Philip's parents' offer. With their support, I went abroad to study. With my background, this might be the only opportunity in my life to study abroad. On the day I left, I told Philip that I wanted to go buy some chocolate. Philip instinctively took out his wallet, buy the most expensive one. I want some too. I didn't take it. No need. I'll be right back. All right. I'll wait for you. And then, I never came back. Chapter 06. As per Philip's parents' request, I left a cruel breakup letter to completely cut off Philip's hopes. This first love, limited to 3 months, quietly faded with the arrival of autumn. I changed my name and severed ties with all my high school classmates. I never had much of a presence before. I was often bullied by my classmates. I cherished this hard-won opportunity to study abroad. I also learned to work out and dress myself better. My name and appearance changed, and with Philip's parents intentionally keeping things from him, Philip had no way to find me. In his eyes, it was as if I had died. But I still heard about Philip from time to time. After I left, he decided to repeat a year of high school and got into Beijing Film Academy. He debuted in college, and his career went smoothly. In front of the camera, he looked gentle and refined. His soft smile charming fans' hearts. There was no trace of the past in him. I suppose everyone changes. I changed too. After a full day of work, my whole body was sore from exhaustion, but my colleagues seemed like they were on a high. Oh my God, this picture is too handsome. What is it? Philip's new candid photo. It's trending. I leaned over to take a look. A candid photo had sparked heated discussion. Philip's character is supposed to bump into his ex. You guys look at his expression. It's incredible. Philip really brought the male lead to life. In the picture, Philip gazed quietly ahead. Every move looked gentle and refined, but his eyes were burning with a dark fire, wanton and wild. What shocked me even more was the blurred silhouette at the edge of the picture, the direction of his gaze. It was me. Chapter 07. The next day, filming resumed. There was an incident involving the female lead. She had to go to the hospital. This was an important scene between the male and female lead. No one could afford delays. The director was anxious and ultimately decided to find a stand-in and shoot Philip's part first. Philip insisted on selecting the stand-in himself. I stood at the very edge of the crowd. Philip's gaze landed right on me. Her. I was stunned. The director had no objections and urged me to quickly change into the female lead's costume. I only needed to be a back figure, but to prevent any issues, the makeup artist still gave me a makeover. When I stood in front of Philip, he seemed momentarily dazed. I didn't dare meet his gaze. Philip asked, "Are you nervous? I've never acted before." "You don't need to act. Just listen to me." He paused, then added, "Relax. If you're nervous, your body will tense up, and it won't look natural on camera. All right, you can take a deep breath. Try to calm down." "Thank you, Philip. The camera will be on me. Just listen as I say my lines." "Anne." He didn't continue. "What else?" I looked up at him. "And, where's my chocolate?" Philip enunciated every word, a hint of madness glimmering in his eyes, no less intense than in the past. He slowly reached out his hand. "Selena, it's been 7 years. Shouldn't you have bought it by now?" Chapter 08. I've found out. That was my first thought. Philip must have recognized me a long time ago. Coincidentally, this scene was also one where the male lead deeply confesses his feelings to the female lead after a long separation. For a moment, I felt as if that was exactly what he wanted to say to me. But how could that be? In real life, Philip never spoke sweet words to me. After the scene, the director gave me a thumbs up. "You have a knack for acting. Your expression was spot on just now." Me? Could it be that we were both just playing ourselves? In the following scenes, Philip specifically requested to work with me. My head hurt. Philip was tied up in so many interests that even the director couldn't afford to offend him. Promoting me to this position was obviously revenge, wasn't it? I was promoted from assistant to assistant director. Philip's personal assistant director. 18 hours a day. I had to revolve around him. But I wasn't just doing the assistant director's work. For example, when heavy props needed to be moved, even the girls had to pitch in. As soon as I rolled up my sleeves, Philip grabbed me. "Go buy me bubble tea." Not just bubble tea, he ordered a ton of snacks too. Delivery could have easily brought them, but he insisted I fetch everything myself. But to be fair, my colleagues were all jealous. I got paid to wander around outside. When I returned with the snacks, Philip wouldn't eat them. "Don't want them anymore. Take them away." After a week of working under Philip, I had actually gained weight. Gradually, even my colleagues became curious. "Is he purposely buying snacks for you?" "No way. But he does seem to be indulging you," a colleague said. "Philip is very strict. And his company has invested in this film too." He scolded the previous assistant director a lot. "But he's never yelled at you." "That's not true," I denied firmly. I was lucky he wasn't making my life harder. Rumors in the crew eventually reached Amelia. She rushed over. "Are you Philip's new assistant?" I couldn't help correcting her. "I'm the assistant director." "You're so young. Can you do the job well?" "Miss, please don't judge a book by its cover." Amelia pouted, staring at me for a long moment. "Haven't I seen you somewhere before?" Chapter 09. Maybe you've got the wrong person. I wasn't interested in reminiscing with the little princess, so I continued sorting out my work plan. Amelia snorted. "Women in this crew like you. I've seen plenty." "Me? ? Don't think that just because Philip trusts you, you have a chance to climb up. I advise you to know your place, or you'll end up heartbroken." "What are you talking about? You look a bit like Philip's ex-girlfriend." After saying that, Amelia waited for my reaction. She thought I'd be shocked and upset to find out I was just a stand-in. But I looked at her, confused. "So? He values you just because you're a stand-in, not because he truly appreciates you. Philip hates that person. Don't think too highly of yourself." I put down my work and smiled at her. If he hates her, then why find a stand-in? That's very contradictory. "Miss." Amelia had no response, stomping her feet in frustration. After she left, my mind couldn't settle. Philip hates me, just as I thought. That night, Philip suddenly messaged me, asking me to bring him some medicine, to avoid offending the lead actor. I bought the medicine and brought it to him. I thought Philip was just messing with me, but he was genuinely sick, with beads of sweat on his forehead. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Stomachache. Where's your assistant?" "Gone to the city. Can't make it back." Strange. Philip never had stomach problems before. I asked. "What happened to your stomach?" "The year I repeated a grade. I didn't eat properly." "Why not eat?" "No one saved me a meal." He half closed his eyes, looking at me. That reminded me of the past. When Philip would come to crash at my place, I'd always save him a bit of food. By the time I finished my homework, he would have eaten it all up. "What about the cafeteria?" "It tasted bad." Typical of his stubbornness. I noticed there was a large table full of dishes. "Still steaming," Philip said. "Just arrived." "I can't eat with the stomachache." What a waste. After eating boxed meals from the crew every day, I was craving something like this. "Go ahead," he said, seemingly nonchalantly. "Leaving it there is just a waste. If you're not eating, throw it away." I broke apart a pair of disposable chopsticks and sat down at the table. I ate quietly, and the room was very quiet. I thought Philip had fallen asleep. I turned my head, and he was watching me, with a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. As soon as our eyes met, his smile disappeared. He returned to that look, as if the whole world owed him something. A mad dog, no different than before, I said quietly to myself. We remained silent as usual, without saying a word to each other. It wasn't until I was about to leave that Philip spoke. "Selena, Amelia and I have nothing between us. Never did, and never will." "Oh," I nodded politely. "But Philip, I don't care anymore." Chapter 10. My words made Philip's face dark for several days. It didn't matter. We were almost done filming anyway, but just a few days before we wrapped up, an unexpected accident happened. It was a scene on a boat. On a very windy day, the sound engineer had gone to the bathroom, and I temporarily took over his job, standing on the edge of the deck, holding a microphone that was taller than I was. I felt unsteady and wobbled a bit. A sudden gust of wind blew, and before I could steady myself, I fell off the boat. Below was a lake, and I didn't know how to swim. Amid the chaos, I heard a frantic shout. "Selena!" Philip jumped straight down after me. He held me tightly, as if he never wanted to let go. After that, I remembered nothing. I woke up in an unfamiliar room. There was a handwritten note by the bed. "This is my house, not far from the filming base. I've given you time off, so rest for a few days. If you need to change clothes, there are some in the walk-in closet. Just bought some women's clothing." The handwriting was unmistakably Philip's. Many actors had homes near the filming base. Philip was no exception. I had read gossip before, saying he lived here most of the time. The house was very clean, and when I entered the walk-in closet, a floral-patterned umbrella caught my eye first. It was the same one I had used for Philip many years ago. The umbrella was very old, and the quality wasn't good, but it had been placed in the most prominent spot in the closet. Suddenly, I remembered that torrential rainy day. I had used this umbrella to shield him from the storm. Philip kept trying to chase me away. I didn't know where I got the courage from, but I opened his jacket to check his wound. He wanted to swear, but held back. Good. No need for a hospital. I thrust the umbrella into his hand. "Wait here. I'll go buy some medicine. I'll be back soon." "Get lost." He was furious. 10 minutes later, I returned, having bought the medicine and also some food. The rain had drenched me. He looked at me silently. Since that day, Philip never said a bad word to me again. Later, I found out that, actually, he was very surprised that day. No one had ever returned for him in his life. I was the first. The memory ended. I found the women's clothing and slowly began changing. I hadn't yet put on the top when the walk-in closet door suddenly opened. Philip and I stared at each other. It was a bit awkward. Chapter 11. Philip quickly backed out. Once I finished changing clothes, he said anxiously, "You didn't make a sound." "I thought you'd left again," I replied. "Why are you yelling?" Philip paused, and his arrogance instantly disappeared. That phrase always worked before. Whenever Philip got angry, I would say, "Why are you yelling?" in a calm but firm manner, and he would immediately back down. I didn't expect it to still work now. I continued. I haven't even blamed you yet. Why didn't you knock before coming into the walk-in closet? I didn't know you were in there. His face turned red. I didn't see anything. Really? If you're upset, I can apologize. I'm sorry. I had noticed a long time ago that, though Philip acted like a mad dog, he was surprisingly innocent in certain matters. It's okay, I said, a little tired and without thinking. It's not like you haven't seen it before. After saying it, I realized it was inappropriate. Sure enough, Philip pursed his lips, his face turning red all the way to his neck. I changed the subject. Don't you have a scene today? I finished shooting. I'm going to cook some porridge. Take the medicine later. Because of the fall into the water, I had caught a bit of a cold. When Philip brought the porridge over, he was still wearing an apron. I couldn't help but take a couple of extra glances. A fierce dog wearing an apron, you look quite like a housewife. What did you say? I said. Thank you. Philip's eyes lit up, like a dog receiving a reward, but his tone was still gruff. Finish all of the porridge. No wasting. If you want to eat anything else, I can reluctantly make it for you. No need to trouble yourself. Just do your own thing. I don't have a scene tomorrow morning. I'm not going back to the crew tonight, so I have time to prepare more food. I hesitated. Then, are you going to sleep here? Yes. I'll move to the side room. The side room doesn't have any extra bedding. You're sick. Stay in bed and rest properly. Don't push yourself. Philip pointed to the floor. Same as before. I'll sleep on the floor. Chapter 12. I had a fever again in the middle of the night. Philip hardly slept, changing my towel every so often. People are often confused when they have a high fever, and it's not uncommon to experience hallucinations. In my daze, I thought I was back in that small basement. Philip was sleeping on the floor, keeping his distance from me, several meters away. There was a table between us, and when I looked over, all I could see was his back. Once, Philip was sick, but he held it in and didn't say anything. I sensed something was wrong in the middle of the night and got up to check his forehead. It was burning hot. I ran upstairs to get some fever medicine and repeatedly wiped his face with a towel. Philip reached out and suddenly grabbed me. He held on for a long time, as if afraid I'd leave. Only after falling asleep did he finally let go. That was the closest contact between us before graduation. Most of the time, we were like strangers, passing by each other at school. I spent the night in a haze. When I woke up the next day, Philip was already gone. He had been called away to reshoot a scene, but on the table, there was a meal he had already prepared. Right in the center, there was a pack of chocolates, the most expensive kind. Halfway through my meal, someone came in. I thought Philip had come back, but it was an unfamiliar man. I recognized him, Philip's agent and good friend. The agent stared at me, dumbfounded. Holy crap. Philip actually hit a woman. Chapter 13. I explained over and over that I was just the assistant director for the crew. The agent asked for my name. I said, just call me Selena. He was so shocked that he almost jumped up. Selena? You're Selena. What about it? He looked at me, suddenly realizing. So you are Selena. Seeing my confusion, he added, Philip went crazy looking for you before. I was speechless. He couldn't find you, so he gave up on himself, stopped eating and sleeping, and was completely down in the dumps for a long time. The agent smiled warmly. Now everything's okay. He's found you, and he can finally have peace of mind. 7 years. No need to keep torturing himself. You must be joking. I said. We only dated for 3 months. It couldn't have been that unforgettable. How could it not be? Don't you know that Philip became a star because of you? I was stunned. Because of his parents. He hated the idea of being a star from a young age. When they wanted him to debut as a child star, he refused. But after breaking up with you, this guy suddenly said he wanted to be a star. He said it was because you loved movies. And as a star, he could stand at the brightest and best place for you to see. It was true. One night, I couldn't sleep, and I talked to Philip. Philip, are you awake? No. I watched a movie today, Roman Holiday. It was so good. No interest. I love movies. It'd be great if I could make movies someday. But making movies costs a lot of money, right? I don't have the money for that. It's not that expensive. Make them. I thought he didn't understand anything and was just daydreaming. So I stopped talking. Turns out he remembered everything. The agent sighed with emotion. You, with just 3 months, made him think about you for a lifetime. In the afternoon, Philip returned. He asked the agent, "What are you doing here? You're about to wrap up filming, so I came over to clean up." "No need. You can leave. Also, I'm going to take a break for a while. Don't schedule anything. TSK. Forgetting your friends when you see a pretty face. Remember how, back then, you couldn't find her, and you cried your eyes out in front of me." Philip interrupted. "Don't talk about those things in front of my girlfriend," I corrected. "Ex-girlfriend. You never personally broke up with me, so it's not over. I left a letter. Just a letter. I read it and threw it away. How do I know if it was even written by you?" Seeing the situation, the agent slipped away. I said, "Philip, weren't you angry when you saw that letter? I said I'd expose all your secrets." Philip laughed. "You wouldn't dare. Besides, do I need someone to tell me if anything was exposed? I can check the news myself." I was speechless. Philip went to wash some fruit. I continued. "Breaking up only needs one person to agree, whether you acknowledge it or not. We ended a long time ago." He froze for a moment. "Then I'll start over." "It won't work." "Philip, are you mad at me?" He lit a cigarette in frustration. "But, seeing me," he put it out. "Is it because I lied to you and didn't tell you about my background? Or because of Amelia, and I didn't explain it to you in time? It's all of that. And none of it, Philip. We're just not meant to be. Don't force it." The room was so silent you could hear a pin drop. After who knows how long. Philip's eyes were bloodshot, and he spoke like he was determined. "I will force it." Chapter 14. I didn't take Philip's words to heart. After wrapping up the shoot, I made a trip back to my hometown. My aunt's old house was about to be demolished, and she asked me to come help deal with the furniture. Although my aunt had favored her own children over me in the past, she still took care of me, and I wouldn't be ungrateful. On the way back, I passed by my old high school. The building had been renovated a few years ago, and it looked quite different. I stood at the gate for a moment when someone called out to me. "Hey, aren't you? You look familiar. I remember you." A man, around my age, walked out of the guardroom. "You went to this school, right?" "I remember. You were in the same class as Philip, weren't you?" I nodded. "And you are." I used to fight Philip. "By the way, why are you here alone today? Where's Philip? Wasn't he always following behind you?" I was stunned. "Following behind me?" "Yeah, every night after evening classes. Philip would follow you home." "You didn't know that? Was that really true?" Seeing my disbelief, the guy continued. "The most surprising time was when I had a fight scheduled with him. Right in the middle of the fight, he suddenly called it off, saying he had to go back to school." Man, I was so confused. "Philip? Going back to school?" I was curious. So I followed him, and I saw him standing there at the gate, waiting and waiting until you came out. And then he followed you all the way home, making sure you got there safely before coming back to fight me. He pointed at a corner with a sycamore tree. He would just stand there, waiting. 17-year-old Philip liked to wear black and kept his hair cropped short. He always seemed to blend into the night. A gust of wind blew past. It felt like he was still standing there, fading into the darkness. My aunt called, urging me to come. When I arrived, I was helping with the basement, the bed I used to sleep in, the desk I had used. We brought them all out, one by one. My aunt said, "Selena, I found something. Come take a look." She pointed to a corner of the dark, bare floor. There, my name was carved over and over again. Chapter 15. "Was it that boy who carved it?" Aunt said. "That boy who's now a star." I was surprised. "How do you know?" "Oh, he came to find me." "When?" Do you remember when I found cigarette butts here and scolded you? I remember. You were so stubborn back then. I almost couldn't stand you. You insisted it was you who smoked. But I knew you weren't that kind of child. Recalling the past, Aunt seemed somewhat nostalgic. The day I scolded you, that boy was at the window. He saw it all. Later, he found me in private, knelt down in front of me, apologized, and begged me not to blame you. I clutched the edge of my clothes. My breathing slowed. I was afraid he would lead you astray, so I firmly forbade him from coming here to sleep on the floor again. So that was it. By the end of sophomore year, Philip stopped coming to find food and a place to sleep. In school, he was always surrounded by a group of troublemakers, and I couldn't find an opportunity to ask him anything. Finally, one day, I mustered up the courage. Before Philip could respond, a boy next to him laughed. Philip, you're impressive. Even got a good girl warming your bed. Before he could finish speaking, Philip's fist swung out, directly giving the boy a bloody nose. She's a girl. Don't talk crap. It was the first time I saw Philip lose his temper. It was a little bloody, so I ran away. The next day, Philip passed by my desk and said in a barely audible voice, I found a place to stay. That was his answer to my question, I suppose. My fingers brushed over the marks on the floor. This was where Philip used to sleep. They meant that there were sleepless nights too. Philip, who never spoke, had called out to me in his heart, countless times. Chapter 16, the day before demolition. I walked from the school gate back to Anne's house again. This familiar path was covered by dense sycamore trees. Walking all the way to the end, I saw the small window of the basement, almost as if by telepathy. I turned around. Philip, wearing a mask, was standing across the street. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in the restaurant we used to visit. Since the end of the shoot, I hadn't answered his calls. I didn't expect that he would still find me. Next to the restaurant was that old pool hall, watching the boys coming in and out. I suddenly wanted an answer. Philip, that summer, I came here looking for you. Yeah. You were very impatient and chased me away. Did you know I was really hurt? Philip looked startled for a moment. I wasn't impatient, Selena. At that time, I was just scared and anxious. Scared of what? That pool hall was not a good place. The guy I was meeting wasn't a good person either. And he was always looking for an excuse to hit me. When you showed up, I was terrified, afraid they would target you. Philip furrowed his brows, recalling carefully. I'm sorry, Selena. I was so nervous that I made you misunderstand. At that moment, the shop owner called our number. I asked Philip to get us a bottle of water while he was up. As soon as he left, I found myself surrounded by a group of sleazy men. Hey beautiful, wanna hang out with us? That guy earlier, your boyfriend? Why was he eating with a mask on? Sick, isn't he? I stared at them coldly. Get lost. Oh. Got some attitude. Huh? That just makes me want you more. The leader reached out, trying to touch my shoulder. The next second, he let out a howl of pain. Philip had nearly twisted his wrist off. Screw you! Beat him up! Get him! Philip put himself in front of me. He abandoned his disguise and polite demeanor, exuding a violent air. I watched in a daze. It was him, my Philip. He was back. Ruthless. Ferocious, but always protecting me. I had no doubt that Philip could take all 4 of them down by himself, but I had to stop him. With his current status, he couldn't afford to get into a fight. Philip was stubborn, glaring at the 4 of them, unwilling to back down. I tugged on his hand. Philip, don't do this. I'm scared. Philip froze instantly. Then, it was as if he had been doused in water. His aggression vanished, and even his sharp edges softened. Selena is scared. Then let's forget it. Philip, let's run. Philip held my hand tightly and pulled me along as we dashed away. Through streets, weaving through crowds, we ran and ran, tireless. The sound of my heartbeat amplified in my ears. Thumping. The last time I heard this sound, it was because of this person, bringing that youthful rush to my heart. And now, it was as if he was still that young boy. Chapter 17. We ran all the way to my aunt's house and slipped into the basement. The place was already empty, awaiting its demolition tomorrow. There wasn't even a light. Only the moonlight shone in. Philip, Selena, we spoke at the same time. In the end, I decided to go first. You used to walk me home every day? Yeah, your street was pretty secluded, and people often harassed girls there. I couldn't let you walk alone. I wasn't comfortable with it. Why didn't you tell me back then? What was the point of telling you? He said lazily. You get scared easily. If I'd told you, you'd have been afraid. You were trying to get into college. Your job was to study hard, everything else was my responsibility. I pointed at the carvings on the floor. Then what do these mean? They mean I like you. I was stunned for a moment. When we were 18. You never said that. Philip lowered his eyes, speaking slowly, because back then, I didn't know how to say it. Philip's past was complicated. He had parents, but they might as well have not been there. Growing up in a cold, indifferent household, no one had taught him how to love someone. No one had shown him how to express love. Philip thought that always being available, spending money on me, that was his way of confessing. When I took the initiative, he was genuinely happy, but he wasn't used to being loved or being close to someone, so he seemed very passive. He practiced saying it in front of the mirror, but it felt awkward. He couldn't bring himself to say it out loud, so he decided to write it down instead. He folded 1,000 paper cranes, writing I like you inside each one. He planned to give them to me on my birthday, but unfortunately, he never got the chance. After starting his acting career, playing different roles helped him learn how to express himself. But by then, the person he wanted to speak to was already gone. After a moment, I asked, "What about Amelia? You treated her so well." Philip shook his head. I was good to her because she once saved my life. My eyes widened. What? When we were kids, my parents weren't around. She was the one who kept coming over to play with me. Once, I had a fever, and she was the first to notice. She cried and screamed until the adults paid attention, and they finally realized how sick I was. The doctor said if they'd been any later, my brain could have been permanently damaged. Talking about the past, Philip gave a self-deprecating smile. After that, I promised her I'd treat her like a little sister. For all these years, I really have thought of her that way. But that summer, there was another complication. Amelia threatened me. She said if I didn't put up with her, she'd tell my parents lies about you, enough to make them hate you completely. My parents always trusted Amelia, and if she exaggerated or fabricated things, it would be bad for you. I didn't trust my parents' character either. If they blamed you, they could have interfered and made sure you couldn't even get into college. I suddenly understood. So, that's why you told me not to provoke her. Yes. Philip knew what I was referring to. Amelia said you pushed her into those guys, and I didn't believe a word of it. I just wanted you to avoid her completely, not even speak to her, so you'd be safe. Philip drooped his head, looking like a dejected dog. I never thought it would lead to such a huge misunderstanding. Selena, you could have just asked me directly. Looking back, I felt overwhelmed by mixed emotions. He didn't know how to love someone, but did I? No, I didn't either. After being abandoned by both parents, I lost the courage to ask questions. Growing up, I only knew how to obey. In my world, only obedience, listening, and being well-behaved led to rare praise. That was the only way I wouldn't be abandoned again. So when it came to Philip, I would rather silently bear the sadness than ask him anything. I didn't even dare to be angry. Our inability to love was a mutual affliction. Philip was a stray dog, but wasn't I the same? I was also just a little dog yearning for some kind of salvation. The moonlight poured in like water, and Philip held my hand, refusing to let go. But there was still one more thing I needed to say. I looked Philip in the eyes and said, I went abroad with your parents' money. I figured I could have chosen not to go, but it might have been my only chance to study abroad. I was selfish that time. I understand, Philip said, smiling gently for once. Selena, you were always so good. Too good, it made my heart ache. But I want you to be a little selfish, to protect yourself from getting hurt. I'll still put my career first. You know, no problem. I'll follow you. You're a movie star with a bright future. Why follow me? So what? Even becoming a movie star was because of you, Selena. I want to be your personal protector. Just like before, walking alongside me through every dark street. I was feeling a bit tired, so I rested my head on his shoulder. Philip. We only dated for 3 months. Philip leaned down, placing a tender kiss on my forehead. But my love for you didn't end in 3 months. Chapter 18. Philip's decisiveness was unmatched. The day after we cleared up the misunderstanding, he made it public on Weibo. He even tagged me. 3 months. In exchange for a lifetime. The trending searches almost crashed the platform. Everyone was talking about it. I was worried that Philip's parents would give him trouble again, but I was overthinking it. Philip was 25. Even if his parents disapproved, what could they do? With Philip's personality, they couldn't control him at all. Maybe they had already lost control of him 7 years ago, which is why they came after me instead. I just lacked the courage back then. After Philip went public, someone else also trended. Amelia. That very day, Amelia came storming up to me. No wonder I felt like I'd seen you somewhere before. So, you're Cecilia. It's Selena. I don't care what your name is. I'm telling you, break up with Philip right now. I'm the one who's engaged to him. I opened my mouth but hesitated. Philip appeared, standing right behind Amelia. Amelia continued her provocation. Did you see the online comments? Everyone's calling you a homewrecker, saying you got between me and Philip. If you don't want to lose your job, break up with him and give him back to me. What relationship are you talking about between us? Because I have no idea. Philip spoke up, catching Amelia off guard. She immediately looked aggrieved. Philip, how could you let her deceive you again? Watch your tone. I don't hit women, Philip said with a hint of threat. Amelia flinched, her face turning pale. You said you'd treat me like a sister. Always be good to me. Why are you angry at me now? I've done all I can for you. Amelia, a sister shouldn't aspire to something more, or she won't even be a sister anymore. Amelia had never been spoken to like this. She was furious. Philip, have you been brainwashed? I'll hold a press conference. Just wait. Everyone will know she's the homewrecker. First of all, there's no written proof of any engagement between us. It was just a joke between our parents, and I've publicly denied it many times. Philip narrowed his eyes. Second, if you dare to go public, don't blame me for not holding back. Amelia was enraged. But that poor woman is not worthy of you. Philip suddenly looked at her with a hint of pity. You keep calling her poor. Amelia, have you ever truly liked someone? Of course. I like you. No, you don't. Philip interrupted her. If I weren't Philip, if I didn't have famous parents, if I were just some cigarette-smoking, fighting delinquent, would you still like me? Amelia was stunned, as if she had never considered this question. If you saw me sitting on the roadside on a rainy day like that, would you hold an umbrella over my head? You wouldn't. You'd curse me as a social delinquent. You like my status, not me as a person. You can't even accept that I used to be a delinquent. Philip pulled me away. When I looked back, Amelia was still frozen in place. I wasn't sure if she understood. But the next day, I heard the news. Amelia's press conference went on as planned. Chapter 19. Philip had no right to stop the press conference, but he made a lot of preparations to handle the upcoming crisis. However, the press conference didn't go the way we expected. Amelia appeared in front of the cameras, meticulously dressed. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying for a long time. Today, I want to clarify something. She bit her lip. There is no engagement between Philip and me. The room erupted in murmurs. Everyone had come for some juicy gossip, like a cheating scandal involving the best actor. Philip and I grew up together because our families had business ties, but he always saw me as a sister, and I only saw him as an older brother. Engagement? It was just a rumor. Neither of us acknowledged it, and our parents only mentioned it casually. It doesn't count. I never liked Philip, and he never liked me that way either. I hope everyone stops spreading baseless rumors. As for Selena, Amelia paused for a couple of beats and then spoke seriously. She is Philip's first love. and she is the only sister-in-law Amelia, acknowledge. I apologize for judging her by her appearance. The rumors spread like wildfire. Netizens dug up Amelia's past remarks about judging people based on appearances, leading to heated discussions. But the good thing was, all the preparations Philip had made were unnecessary. Amelia went abroad. She said she wanted to start a new life and meet more people. Another 6 months passed. Philip's father fell ill and could no longer work. His mother also canceled most of her engagements to stay home and care for him. Meanwhile, Philip's career continued to flourish, and he soon took over the family business, with full control in his hands. No elder could interfere with his decisions anymore. The enlightened Philip seemed like a changed man. What he had once lacked, he now sought to make up for. Half of his Weibo posts were about me, and he even mentioned me on shows. I used to be a jerk, and it was my girlfriend who pulled me out of the darkness and showed me a glimmer of light. But there were side effects. Whenever he couldn't find me, Philip would panic, terrified that I would leave again. Occasionally, in the middle of the night, he would hold me tightly, refusing to let go. Selena, Selena, Selena. He called my name over and over again, tirelessly. It reminded me of the words carved into the dust of the past. Chapter 20. Spring at 27. Philip accompanied me back to our alma mater. Youth is like the seasons, one after another. There are always people who are young. There are always people facing the stirrings of emotion, unsure of what to do. Outside the classroom from back then, there was a large sycamore tree. The two of us stood under the tree, listening to the clear voices of the students. I asked Philip, 7 years. What if I hadn't come back? You would come back. So sure? Philip, on that rainy day, you came back. So I believe that this time, you would come back too. I am the only person in his life who has ever left and returned. And today, I still am. We stood beneath the classroom window. Philip lowered his head and kissed me gently. Selena, I love you. In high school, I picked up a school bully that no one wanted. Today marks the 10th year since I picked him up, and it is also the first day of our marriage. If someone were to ask me in the future what the best love letter I've ever received was, I would tell them this. It is the path home after school. It is the nights we spent in each other's company. It is a string of silent, carved words. May you and I be happy.